All right, this is going to be an intuitive video on justice alongside the King of Swords. Or you can look at this as the King of Swords with justice alongside it. These two cards came out together. Spirit was calling me to pull a card for you, for the collective. And the King of Swords came up, and so justice was right behind it. And now when you look up, okay, so this is an intuitive description, meaning we're not going to get into the actual astrology. We're not going to get into the details of the descriptions of the cards in the Radiant Wise or the or any of the tarot decks description. We're not going to get into the details. We're just going to go off of what Spirit is telling us. So use your own discernment when you see these cards, and the details that come up are very relevant. There are no mistakes. And that's pretty much where we start off with examining these two cards. And we can start with posture. Our perception of the posture of justice and the king. So when you do look up the descriptions, we're not going to get into it, but when you do look up the descriptions, it talks about justice emulating, or excuse me, the King of Swords and the Queen of Swords emulating justice. And we know justice is like a balance. It's a masculine, feminine. It is right use of will and confidence. Basically doing the right thing, right? And so that is interpreted by the personal experience. Now, these cards talk to each other, and we're going to get into that. Since they emulate each other, they actually talk to each other, and what I want to do is be very realistic. You know, you are the king or queen, however you'd like to look at this. Both these characters are very androgynous, even though it does say that the king is the masculine expression. Their faces and their bodies and their posture and everything about them and the scenery around them is very androgynous. Doesn't really specify what you're looking at, whether or not that's male or female. And so what you got is, the first thing that's obvious is that they're both holding swords in their perspective right hand, or if you put up your hand, it would be your left hand, which is significant. If you look at your left hand, you most likely have an X in the center of your left hand. And then you have a line in your hand that goes all the way down to your wrist. Now, for some of you, it might curve to the left and kind of cut off, or maybe even branch off a little bit. And for some of you, it extends all the way down to that horizontal line, which is also significant in your own personal story. We're not going to get into that here, but if you'd like to look that up, Spirit is asking you to point your perception and your acknowledgments, they're telling me, in that perspective direction. You know, if you find yourself looking at something, or you turn your head and you find yourself staring into space in a direction, there is a reason for that. So if you engage your focus, whatever you're looking at actually has a deeper meaning. That is your intuitive nature calling you to look in directions, calling you to see truth that leads you down this deeper path. Now, getting back to the posturing and the speaking to each other in these cards. If you look at justice, justice is posturing the sword perfectly vertical towards the sky, in confidence and in declaration, you know, declaring what is truth and what is the way to do things, the way to posture, the way to action. And then sort of almost counterintuitive a little bit to justice, we have the King of Swords, who is holding the sword in the same hand, but in an obviously different, more uncertain way. And if they were to speak to each other, Justice would say, this is how you hold your sword. This is how you communicate. And since we're talking reality here, you are the king or the queen, whoever's holding that sword, sitting on that throne. The literal expression is, why do I have the sword? Why did you give me this position? Why am I sitting here? This is confusing. I am uncertain. But if you say that I am the one to do the job, then I am here to do the job. So there's no getting up. There's a thinking, there's a posturing to make a motion. If you notice, if you look really close, this helps if you have the cards in front of you. But if all you have is the video, then try to look close. There's a foot sticking out from underneath the robe of both Justice and the King of Swords. I don't have the Queen of Swords in front of me right now, but it's possible that even she might have a foot sticking out from underneath the robes. As I get a sip of my coffee. Now, there's nothing going on in the left hand, but for Justice is holding the scales, and so the scales is what Justice is mostly meant for, or mostly known for. So there's a foot sticking out from under the robe, and it kind of implies that there is more going on to this sort of smoke and mirrors. I don't know if smoke and mirrors is the right word. It came out, but both of these characters are wearing robes, and they hide the different shapes and facets of the body, of an androgynous feeling. Okay, and so you might be feeling disconnected. You might be feeling that this is a time to start anew, or maybe attune to different perspectives on life. You might be trying to find a balance and finding yourself sitting in a position where it's like, okay, well, I don't know why, but I'm going to find out why I've been put in this position. I'm holding the sword. I know I need to communicate, but it's a little awkward. The words kind of escape me. I don't necessarily have the confidence, but I know there's a reason for everything. And I know that I am chosen for that reason because I am aware and I am willing. Things are very unorganized. If you look at the difference between Justice and the King of Swords and look at the ground, look at where those feet are. Look at the difference in the organization. In Justice, you have a completely clean and swept floor, an elevated, exalted floor. And then in the King of Swords, you have this sort of raising up, almost kind of exalted, like someone put a bunch of stones, stacked it, and said, hey, here's your throne. And it's very unorganized. It's a lot of colors. It's not a flat surface that is exalted, but it's a natural landscape versus the structural landscape. And so those two reflect each other, how in the spirit realm, things would not look so structured and organized. Things emanate, with spirit, and that's life force. So it could be very wild, like spirit animals, which we're going to talk about. And so in the King of Swords, you have this natural landscape, but ultimately, with the only structure visible, aside from the sword maybe, is the throne behind him, which has the butterflies. And the butterflies reflect the spirit world, or the soul, or a higher consciousness. And then that how what we do in this world ripples, it ripples in the etheric, in the higher realms. So you have this natural landscape versus a very structured landscape, but it is natural and it is true. So he is still a king on his throne in this natural landscape. Okay, so regardless if you come from the cityscapes, you come from the countryside, you come from the middle of the Amazon jungle, it doesn't really matter. There is a place for every king and queen to command their own perceptual reality, to declare what it is they are actually seeing and the way to communicate. Now, the way, going back to the sword, now in the etheric, when we are confident and we are speaking from truth or emanating from truth, it is exalted, it is correct. But when we do it, even when we have the confidence here in the physical world, it's either going to come out as ego with this extra confidence, or it's going to come out with a, you know, with a lesser degree. It's all ego, but it's going to have a less blatant in your face, kind of a modest. There's no such thing as modesty, but we'll just, in this analogy, we'll just pretend like there is such a thing as modesty. And there is no such thing because we have justice and the King of Swords right in front of us. Okay, there's no room for actual modesty. It is posturing and perception and how you perceive that posturing. So we have a sword that is sticking up straight towards the heavens, but it doesn't have to be perfect. See, the hands don't necessarily need to be in a place where it knows what it needs to do. You hold it to the viewer saying, I am the chosen one. This is metaphorically. I am the chosen one. This is my position. This is what I'm meant to do. But it can go any way you'd like it. Look at this sword. He's just kind of holding it out like, look, like this sword is as much yours as it is mine. Okay? I am exalted in my heart and in my mind, and in the order perceives me that way. The heavens, God, the universe, however you perceive it, looks at me as this exalted being who's willing to do the dirty work, who's willing to take the blunt force of anything that life has to offer them. And in return, you receive many rewards. That's this throne, it's this position, this responsibility, But he knows he's human, and he holds the sword and he goes, look, I emulate balance. I emulate justice. I emanate that. Okay? But in the end, I am just a person standing in front of you. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do for you when you are the commander and king or queen of your own natural reality? And then there's two birds off on his, or when we're looking at it on the right side, there's two birds up above the clouds, up above the clouds. And this is sort of like a, kind of like a caw, like kind of like a hint, like, oh, mind blown, time to raise up and take that perception even higher. Both justice and the king or the queen hold, the crown on their head. It's never perfect. Justice, it almost looks like justice kind of like wants it to be in the middle, but knows that it's sort of off center. And the king just naturally, same thing, intuitively, because spirit animates the body, animates the body so that the intuitive self can be in spirit. The soul can be in spirit. It reflects every little move, every little twist and turn. And so there's other things going on here. Now we have an indigenous cultural perceptions. We have a searching. Now this is where it starts to get relative to your story, or maybe even the stories of people around you, maybe someone in your past, maybe something in the past that you've experienced, somewhere along these lines. So we have teachings. It's a time in your life, in this person's life, to take on new teachings that take us back to our more anima or primal spirit. Okay, the spirit animal world. So jaguar medicine. Jaguar medicine has been coming up. This is Amazonian shamanic medicine indigenous to South America, and pretty much the same philosophy for cats. Ooh, the candle's starting to flicker and sizzle. Ooh, this gave me the chills. There are cats all over the world that can fall under the same medicine, the spiritual archetypal medicine. But the jaguar medicine in shamanic teachings represents the medicine of the mind that rises above the anima, the animal world, the spirit animating the physical world. And which is why we know animals just sort of do whatever they want. They don't have no, they don't have no necessarily um they don't have a structure of a way that they see things. They'll just go do their business out in nature, where humans, reflect a confused divinity, a fractured divinity, where we have to have the structure to even these more basic primal necessities of life, these balances. We separate them. So jaguar medicine, it works to calm the nervous system for this separation that occurs. In the separation of the mind, body, the gut flora, the imbalance. The mind is always trying to make sense of what the physical world is offering up, the signs. And so in jaguar medicine, the philosophy is, depending on, there's a general theme, but depending on the type of jaguar that you relate to, you're bringing the jaguar down from the tree, because the jaguar, as wise and as fearless as it is in the animal world, in its confused structured nature, it reacts by going up the tree to get a better view, because it cannot see things from a horizontal, or from on the horizon. There is no horizon in the jungle. There is only the higher viewpoint from taking the body up the tree and looking down to gain a new perspective, and looking down and hissing, growling at the dangers of the serpent world, the lower world that crawls on its belly in confusion, in the muck and in the mud. So jaguar medicine, I'm not getting emotional, it's just really early. I don't really have much of an attachment to this to this emotionally, but my voice is like this. My throat's dry, a little emotional. You might be able to relate. You might be watching this video in the middle of the night. Coffee tastes dry. It doesn't have enough sweetness in it, but that's okay, because we're eliminating sugar out of our diets in this time. By the way, I'm filming this on April Fool's Day. And so April Fool's Day is significant. Now, I'm not going to get into the details. Don't worry. I'm not going to go on a big tyrant about a rant about what April Fool's Day actually means, but we can chuckle, modestly, and give that up to the etheric realm. Give that up to the jaguar. Send that up into the tree of what April Fool's Day actually means in our physical world, or in our world. So look that up if you don't know. But hint, 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 April Fool's Day is literally a day that's meant to fool you. 1926 on the clock. That's 1926. 1932. Ooh, okay. All right, so jaguar medicine is a step below hummingbird medicine, where hummingbird represents the soul. Now, we're not going to go that high. We're not going to get that high, but we are going to point out the significance of the jaguar is a spirit you call when you want to calm the nerves, when you want to get a better perception of what reality is actually offering you to interpret into your higher etheric awareness, your higher perceptual consciousness, because it always goes from the bottom up in awareness, which is what these which is what these elevations mean. Whenever we see something in the cards that elevates from the ground up and raises the surface on where we stand or where we perceive things, different dimensions going from the lowest to the highest in our literal perception. And then there's the balancing, there's the pillars in justice, which we don't have much of a balancing, visual balancing in the King of Swords, but we see it in the justice, and they emulate each other, they emanate each other, they reflect each other perfectly. So the pillars represent duality, the black pillar, the white pillar. Now in this case, it's made so that you don't know which one's which. You know, you can have an idea and you can have a preconceived notion of which pillar is which, the dark one, the light one, positive, negative, blah, blah, blah. But it's for you to decide by looking at it. And justice is not trying to tell you what's right. It's not trying to say, hey, this is, preset in stone, that this is, along your path. This is what dictates right and wrong. No, that is for the king to decide, which is why kings are, put into power and their subjects put in front of them. And they say, hey, look, we're going to go this way or that way, because obviously you cannot make a decision because you are down there in the serpent world with your mind and your body, and you're confused. I am exalted. I am put on this throne. I don't want to be here. Remember, I'm holding the throne. I'm holding the sword. I'm telling you, hey, you might as well be holding the sword. You might as well be holding the sword. He puts his foot forward, ready to get up, and like, I'll get up. Do you want to sit on this throne? You want to be the commander of your own kingdom? And then the subject goes, no, that is not my intention, my lord. It is not my intention to take up the throne or take your crown. I am merely, coming to you with my burdens. And so he puts his foot back and he goes, yeah, that's right. You're coming to me with your burdens. And so this is where you come in, because you do this in a silent way. You do this in a very quiet way. I saw 2244 on the clock when that came into play. Because see, someone's coming into your life, maybe even a couple different people. These people might have been there for a while, or they might be new people. This is we're stepping into the Aries energy here. But these people kind of acting in their own primal way, sort of exposing things that you don't want to attach yourself to. And so you've had to sort of like brush off. I'm getting the feeling of brushing off my shoulder, brushing the dirt off the shoulder. And literally, like, this dust and this dirt are these people. You have to treat them that way because they want to bring their drama into your life. But you realize this, and you realize that spirit put you in this position because on the other side of this fence, you are going to learn a lesson that is very, very valuable to your story. And when you learn this lesson, you will come back into context simultaneously in synchronicity with these people, with this person. And in your silence, you will see in their motion, their attitude, their eyes, that their perceptual reality has changed. And now all of a sudden, you are justice. And they become the king with the sword, kind of like, oh, I didn't realize I was going to be holding this sword. I didn't realize I was going to be feeling the weight of this crown. You see how important you are in the lives of others. Now, some of y'all are going down the route of tone healing, or let me see. How do I describe this? I don't really have the words for it. It's the image in my mind. It's like handpan or steel tong toning, going out into nature and doing sound therapy. Yeah, sound therapy. That's what they're telling me. Sound therapy. Some of y'all are looking into that and even, Google searching, different maybe flutes or different compact uh, musical instruments that are affordable but that are also expansive, and that you can kind of like, if you want to just go sit on the curb and just play, you can play for people, or go to the lake, film yourself a video of you practicing and then put that out into the world, because you're realizing, your attention's being drawn this way, whether or not you're going to do this. It's sort of like, yeah, I know I need to do this, but it's sort of like there are humps to get over. There's challenges to get over, and we all have the different challenges. Some of it's money, some of it's talent. Trying to step into whether or not you actually have this talent. If it's going to be a waste, whether or not, yeah, you've wasted your time in the past. You don't want to do it now again. Some of y'all will go through this, and you'll have to go through a cycle where you end up having to sell this item. This musical instrument. And I haven't decided if I'm going to buy one. I don't think I'm going to buy one. I might have to figure something else out. But we can just sort of categorize this very broad spectrum of sound therapy as being accessible through tones, tongs, different alchemical, or whether it's metal, whatever kind of metal it's made of, whether it's like a copper, brass, or steel, um, whether or not we're using our hands, our wind instrument. There are two swords in these cards. Might be thinking of a wind instrument, something that takes you higher, something that takes you out of your comfort zone. Um, some of y'all are going the tribal or drum and beat type. Some of y'all are going the more high-tech binaural, because we have Pluto in the age of Aquarius. We have the age of Aquarius, and that is technology and science. So some of y'all are going the binaural beats, making it kind of easy, just putting in the earplugs, or putting in the earbuds and listening to these high-tech, very intelligent binaural beats. Some of y'all are going simple drum, just drum, boom, boom, boom. Some of y'all are going conga and bongo. And then some of y'all are going a string instrument. And I'm seeing a Japanese theme here for some people. I see these trees. They're telling me very Okinawan or even Japanese vibe, almost like somebody. I am getting this total scenario of being dropped off in a chopper, like, and you're dropped off, and you get out of the chopper with your sword, and you sit on your throne, and the wind is being blown by the chopper blades, and it takes off, and you're out here in the middle of like Okinawa, and you're like, why am I here? Why am I here all of a sudden? Okay, and obviously this is personal for someone, where it's like you find yourself in just this place you want to be, but it has a different vibe. It's like you wanted to be here. This is how you saw it in your mind or in the movies. Um, but it's very windy, and it's very kind of like it's kind of like rainy, or they're telling me the stinging on the skin. It's very uncomfortable, and you want to just, like, you didn't bring all your clothes. You didn't, obviously these two are wearing huge robes and garbs, so there's sort of like this theme of needing to cover up, in the place that you are. And so in some places in the world right now, there's some very bad storms. My heart goes out to you. Cover up, stay indoors, or relocate if it's that dangerous. Do what's best for you and your family, but they are telling me that we're dealing with some serious anomalies of weather conditions, some dangerous conditions out there that are going to require you to summon that jaguar down from the tree. Let's see, we have 29:44 on the clock. Okay, we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. But so with all that confusion and all that word salad, someone is going the route of, if you want to call it like an Oriental, Eastern, um, cultural, or even indigenous, or even whatever culture you're going to, you're reaching out to, going back to, whatever roots you're trying to discover, um, you are going to the source of primal spirituality in one shape or another, whether or not that's getting real deep into it or just considering it, which is also part of the natural balance of life. Because, see, we may not come from where we perceive our ancestors come from in the time, in the desert, in the jungle, in the ancient times. We don't come from that, but we are fractured consciousness that is tied directly from both above and below, from the left and the right, the east and the west. And we can summon it all to meet and intersect exactly where we are, which is the epitome of the philosophy of meeting you where you are. That's where life, that's where your choice religion, your choice belief in philosophy, your spirituality, as above so below, it vibrates in the human experience. Meeting you in the place that you are, in the mind frame, in the body, in the guilt, in the shame, in the ego, in the exaltation, however you feel or perceive yourself, is exactly how life, the universe, God, and justice perceive you. And they're ready to work with you. Spirit is ready to work with you to move forward and move up higher into this etheric consciousness, this butterfly floating above the serpent world, even above where the jaguar lifts you up to. And this balance that you'll find, it's the medium. It's the medium that dissolves confusion. On one side, you have your primal instincts and your spiritual nature that wants to bust loose and break out wild on this earth. And then you have structured reality and influence, a fractured existence that pretends to be exalted, clean, and structured, is false. And in the middle is where you're going to find truth, between the pillars, between the eagle and the hummingbird, the serpent and the jaguar. It's the experience. It envelops all things.